the African Union is gearing to hold its annual Heads of States meeting in Ethiopia this weekend. Issues on the agenda are likely to include the spate of coups in West Africa, the continent's response to climate change, as well as, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's get you a sense of what else lies ahead. Bring in Dr. Atta-Asamoah, who's the Program Head of Africa Peace and Security Governance at the Institute for Security Studies in Addis Ababa for us this morning. Dr. Andrews, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time. You know, many people are counting down the hours to this sitting, thinking to themselves, gee, there probably isn't a greater moment for strong intervention on the continent at a heads level, especially when you consider just how turbulent the year has already been. Thousands killed in wars in the Horn of Africa, countries falling back under military rule in some respects, and just, you know, struggles for faltering transitions and the Islamic insurgency. There is certainly a lot to be unpacked when the AU gets together.
Precisely. There are a lot of issues if you look at what Africa has been through over the last couple of years, particularly 2021. So traditionally, these are the very issues that inform what becomes the agenda of the summit. And so what we are expecting are precisely the kind of issues you raised. There will be discussions on the state of peace and security on the continent. They will look at COVID. They will look at issues of governance. And they will look at issues of migration, climate change, and a host of other very important issues related to administrative and legal issues regarding the framework of the AU itself. So those are the key issues. I think it is fair to say that the nature of the challenges the continent is dealing with have fairly informed the agenda. What is going to be the decision is really what we are looking forward to.
Yeah. Incidentally, July this year marks, I think, the 20th anniversary since the AU was founded. With the benefit of hindsight, can the AU be proud of its track record?
I think the AU has done quite a lot, but there's still a lot that remains undone. It's a question as to whether the AU could have done better, but you cannot necessarily get it correct because you also have the counterfactual to ask yourself, what would Africa have been if the AU didn't exist? I guess the nature of the threats that the AU is dealing with would have been far worse. And so there's more that needs to be done, but the nature of the situations are tough. And so by the time decisions are taken, the situation changes on the ground. And so I feel we need to appreciate what they've been able to do and then push them towards, you know, advancing much more and becoming much more stronger. It's a union of states, and so sometimes it's very difficult when member states do not all the time adhere to what they themselves have agreed to implement. But at the end of the day, what I usually say is that the AU cannot do for member states what member states have got to do for themselves. The AU is a norm entrepreneur, and so the AU can establish frameworks and also push for the adoption of those frameworks. The actual implementation depends very much on the political will of member states to be able to respect these things. And without that, the AU really cannot deliver much.
I wonder whether, you know, the institution itself is able to reach its full potential in the context of perceptions that exist that it is this all-boys club where the heads of states will go out of their way sometimes to even defend each other. I mean, you know, many people still cite a moment we had here in South Africa where Omar al-Bashir was in the country. He was wanted by the international courts. There was a directive that he be held in the country for his arrest, and that didn't happen. And that was viewed through the lens of this perception that I've just painted out for you. So, I mean, how does the AU work at the very least to push back against those perceptions?
I think they are pretty much aware, and I think that is important when it comes to a very complex decision-making body like the AU. They have sovereignties to respect. They have the nature of the international system to deal with. They have recalcitrance on the part of some member states to address. They have the changing nature of threats, be it violent extremism, be it the very difficult nature of governance issues themselves to address. And on top of all of these, you cannot just show up at the doorstep of a country claiming to be AU without being invited. So the nature of the international system, the terrain within which they operate itself is difficult. The good thing is they appreciate some of these weaknesses. That is why they embarked on a reform process, which is trying more or less to push the AU a bit closer to the people, to make the AU an AU of the people, rather than, the long-held perception that is a club for the big boys.
Yeah.
The challenge, however, is that it requires both action on the ground, acceptance by member states, but also an acceptance by our leaders themselves to change. The AU is a union, and so its strength cannot be better than the actual strength of its member states. If we can all push to get better governance in our individual countries, I believe the AU will improve.
Yeah.
At the moment, a lot is being held back because the nature of the components of, the nature of the member states who are themselves the components of the AU and are supposed to animate the decision-making and implementation,
right,
are themselves very weak in very many forms, and that affects the nature of the AU itself.
Plenty to unpack and plenty to look forward to. Thanks for breaking it down for us. Really do appreciate it. Dr. Atta-Asamoah, who's the Program Head of Africa, Peace and Security Governance at the Institute for Security Studies, live to us from Addis Ababa. Once again, thanks very much indeed.